Oh,
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, along with my co host, Ed Carbajal. And on a weekly basis, we plan to bring you the biggest news and interviews in the world of combat sports. Ed, it's been a few weeks, man. How you doing?
hanging in there, bro. Hanging in there. How you doing in over there in Cali with all the fires and heat and all that
Surviving,
nastiness?
yeah, surviving the fires. Definitely been hot. They had a road closure by us due to a fire over the weekend, but didn't get close enough to cause me any damage. But yeah, just been a hectic hot summer, busy at work and stuff, and and MMA's definitely picked up last few weeks. I think the last time we talked was a couple days prior to UFC 226, and that
Yeah,
night, Cormier made history that night, becoming a two division
that's right.
champion.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot. So much has gone on that my mind's been obviously I'm a little fried. But yeah, that happened. I was at the PFL event in DC the Thursday before that, so that was actually a pretty big weekend. So yeah, yeah. I forgot how he called it, but I was happy Daniel Cormier won, man. I mean, he definitely does long overdue some recognition for that man.
Yeah, I think we were both rooting for Daniel. I think we kind of both thought that Miocic might be a little too tough, but he obviously proved us wrong. I was surprised when Cormier came in as big as he was, being at the weigh-ins when he came out. I didn't think that I didn't think he'd have the gas tank, but as it turned out, he really didn't need the gas tank after he knocked him out in the first round.
No, yeah, and if you watch, actually, the best breakdown of that fight, Dominic Cruz did. I don't remember where he did it. It might have been on the MMA hour with what's his face, Luke Thomas. But I forget where I heard it. But Dominic Cruz did the best breakdown of that, and if you rewatch it, you'll notice like Daniel Cormier almost looks like he's coming at Miocic like a zombie, and he was doing that on purpose to force the underhook and let his arm go limp, so that he could catch him with the shot that he caught him with. And if you saw the post-fight interview too, he actually said that was something that he saw, having sat and watched so many of his fights as a commentator. That was something that he saw as a issue with his game. So I mean, these commentators that do that are active fighters too, man, they're getting some cheat sheets put together under the table.
Yeah, well, if we can just get them to be referees and judges, the sport might actually have a chance. Um, but
We're
yeah,
getting there. I think we're getting there.
yeah, no, it's the refereeing I think is improving. Even though we had a little bit of controversy this past weekend with the Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier fight, but there's always controversy.
Yeah, I know we talked on the phone about that, you and me. I don't know, man. I mean, heat of the moment in the fight. I mean, corners, fighters, everybody. It's when you think about the time that passes when you hear about everything that happened. I mean, it's kind of hard to fault anybody, really. I mean, shit happens.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think I expressed to you my main issue was just kind of the lack of consistency when enforcing rules. We see rules broken all the time. We see guys grab the cage all the time. We see guys poke eyes. We see guys low blow. We see guys elbow hit back of the head, and only one out of every 25 or 30 of those does well. I mean, they get broken up for low blows and eye gouges quite a bit, but you don't see fights stood up very often for shots to the back of the head, stuff like that. So
Yeah,
you know,
it's not. It's not like Rusamar Palhares level stuff happening. You know what I mean?
no, it's not brutally blatant. I mean, the elbow from Alvarez wasn't smart of him to throw it. Um, I guess technically it's illegal. I could argue it was probably an 11:59 to 5:29 elbow,
Yeah,
but the 12-6 is an illegal shot in MMA. So, I think he knew it was a mistake. Afterwards, obviously, he owned up to it and he didn't make any excuses. That's one of
yeah.
the thing. That's one of the great things about Eddie is he's just a warrior. He knows what it's all about. And he goes in there and win and lose. There's no excuses to be made. So
Yeah,
I
and
don't know.
Mark Henry was trying to take some blame for it during Helwani's show on Monday, because he was saying that he was telling him to do this, which because it has to be an arcing elbow.
Uh-huh.
So for folks that are listening and not watching the video portion, I'm motioning like a circular elbow. But when he looked over at him quickly, he just saw him touch his elbow. So Alvarez in the short amount of time that he's trying to listen to his corner, he did a 12-6. But like I said, it's like one of those heat of the moment things. I mean, adrenaline's going. I honestly don't think the position would have changed much. You know what I mean? Like I was gonna change anything for him because they got stood back up anyway. I think that the finish would have come in the following round if it didn't come the way that it came. That's my opinion, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think Poirier's probably the more up and coming younger fighter. He's kind of the Eddie Alvarez of 5 years ago. So, you can only go through so many wars before it catches up with you, and you run into the next guy who comes in and is ready to go to war with you. And
Yeah,
is a step up on you. So, it was a great fight. I for the round and whatever last round and a half, it was definitely entertaining.
I don't remember if I said this when we were talking about it on the phone, but do you remember our? Do you think? Because this is something I thought about after watching that fight. Do you think maybe the damage that Alvarez has taken because of his style of fighting, like over, the span of the time he's been fighting since he fought in the underground stuff around here, and you think the damage is just finally catching up to him because of his age and stuff?
I don't know if the damage is catching up as opposed to his style and the evolution of other fighters. Ever since he's been in the sport, he's taken shots. Whether it was against Kawajiri or you know every Cowboy or Poirier the first fight or Gagey. He takes shots in all of his fights throughout his whole career. Michael Chandler, and now I think when you fight somebody who's at your level or possibly you could argue even a step higher at this point, you just don't survive it like you used to.
Yeah, man.
So
Yeah, man.
I still think that he's a top five lightweight in the world. I think he still beats a
Absolutely.
lot of people. Um, he seems a little small compared to Poirier. So I don't I know Eddie. There's no way he's going down to 145, but and at this point of his career, I don't think he even should. But
No.
you know, I just think he gets to the point now where he should get a couple good matchups that match up good for him, and let him put on some shows for the crowd. And if you put strings together 2 or 3 wins in a row, then he gets back in the mix. And at that point, after we weed out through Connor and Ferguson and Poirier and Khabib, maybe he gets one of those guys coming off a loss or two and a chance to get another huge fight again.
Yeah. So this weekend, I know as we're recording this, there's a PFL going on right now, and we'll probably both catch that after we're done. But this weekend, UFC 227. I know you and I had talked. We usually talk predictions, so I didn't know if you had looked at the entire card. I only looked at the main card because that's probably all I'm gonna get to see. Um, so I don't know. What do you
Yeah,
think, man?
it's not the greatest card in the world. It had some fights fall through when Volkan and Gus got pulled
Oh
like a
yeah,
week
that's right.
and a half,
Yeah,
2 ago. So that was a big shot from it. That was one of the fights I was looking forward to.
yeah. It's funny. That was like the best one to bet on too. And one of my training partners, because he knows I cover the sport, so he always texts me when he's because the whole country can place bets now on sport. So like Jersey was one of the ones that couldn't for the longest, and so now you can if you go to like an off-track betting place or whatever. So he texted me from there, and he was like, who do you like? And that was one of the fights to bet. Vulcan was actually the one that you could have made the most money off of, and it was that weekend before that news came out that he was off the card. So he literally like placed his bet 2 days later. The fight got canceled.
Yeah, they just announced today he's headlining an event in Canada against Anthony Smith. So that'll definitely make an interesting event fight on the I think it was October 27th.
Yeah, I
So
hope his nose and everything is straightened out by then. Did you see that picture he posted online? It's like on the side of his face.
is that why he got pulled? He had a
Mm.
broken nose. I didn't
Yeah.
actually know the details. I know Gus kind of pulled out after all the switches with something that he hasn't said. I don't think what it was. So I don't know. It was disappointing to have that fight fall off the card. It's the up until when that fight initially got pulled. The biggest fight was 145 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a WEC style card. They
Yeah,
had
and
it.
and then Betch Correa and Irene Aldana got pulled like 2 days ago.
That was
So
probably the number two fight that I was actually looking forward to on the card.
yeah, me, you and me both.
I'm a fan of Aldana. I watched her fight in live a few times in Invicta, um, and met her, and she's a really cool person. So I was really pulling for her, and Kohei is kind of fun to watch too in a
Yeah.
kind of a circus act kind of way. But you know, uh, that leaves the main event and the co-main event really kind of carrying the card. I know they added Thiago Santos against Kevin Holland, a guy who was on Dana White's contender series. They added that last minute to kind of help add a name value to the event with
Yeah.
Santos, and I was like, gave me a middleweight fight, so I'm
Is
always.
Santos the favorite in that? That's the
Uh,
only one I don't have any notes on.
I think he's a huge favorite. I I, I can't imagine that he wouldn't be at least a 3 or 4 to 1 favorite in that fight.
Yeah.
I know I saw Holland's fight on the show, the Contender Series, but I don't know a lot about him in general.
So the
Uh,
first fight is Cub Swanson versus Hanata Moicano.
Moicano.
I'm laughing because I don't know if you saw there was an ad for UFC Unfiltered, and Phoenix Carnival and Matt Serra were on a little video, and he asked her to say his name, and she said it, but she made it sound like Hakuna Matata. So I retweeted it. If you haven't checked it out, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, Cubs coming off back-to-back losses, but they're to Ortega and Frankie Edgar. Moicano's only loss is to Ortega at UFC 214. So I know Moicano's. I think he's a pretty big favorite on going into that fight. Um,
See, that's one of the fights where I can't pick. I can't pick against Cub because it seems like every time you pick against Cub Swanson, that's when he like decimates the guy. You know?
no, that's true. I think the underdog. The fact that he's as big of an underdog as he is pretty wrong. And if I was in Vegas, I'd probably throw a few bucks on him in that fight. Um, it's one of those things. You got the young up and comer against kind of the veteran who's been around for a while and fought a who's who of the sport. So you know, uh, it's probably hard to you can't really pick against Swanson, but it's also hard to pick him to win that fight.
Yeah.
Uh,
Actually, it's not hard for me. I have him picked to win on when I wrote my notes on them. I mean, I like him for that reason though, because most guys, with the exception of Brian Ortega, the guys that they thought he was going to lose to, he wound up winning well against. And I know for him, I know he talked about it recently. I mean, he's obviously making better money. That's why he renewed with the UFC. But obviously, he seems like the type of guy that would want to make earn his keep, so to say, like perform to what he's getting paid. So
oh, he's going to show up to fight. It's
yeah,
just going to be a matter of where he's at in his career, really, at this point. 3 losses in a row is obviously not a good thing. Although, against top competition, it's also not the worst thing in the world. It just I'm not sure exactly. He just signed a new contract prior to his fight with Frankie. I'm not sure how many fights and stuff he has on it, but yeah, I mean, I'm pulling for him. He's a local Southern California guy. You can even see that with his tattoo on his chest. So I've been watching him fight since King of the Cage. It's been a long time watching him around here. So be pulling for him. And then after that, it looks like we got Polyana Viana versus JJ Aldrich. Aldrich was on the Ultimate Fighter show. Um, kind of a card that came up from the undercard with all the changes. Um,
yeah, that's another one that I don't have any notes on. So it's hard for me to pick. It's hard for me.
Aldridge is on a 2 fight winning streak. Her last win was against Daniela Taylor, who's also on the prelim. Um, she's won 5 of her last 6, so she's definitely the up and comer. Viana's 10-1
Mm.
with her only. She's only fought. She only has 1 fight in the UFC. She won her last fight, so she's that's a hard one to pick again. Not a whole lot of information if you haven't watched a lot of women's MMA over the time, but
Yeah.
you know, Aldridge is more of a stand-up fighter. I think Viana is more of a ground fighter, so I'll probably take Viana in that one because you know how strikers versus grapplers usually go.
Yeah, unless the striker's like super world class, like somebody that you know, like some K1 level glory type of striker. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Well, we saw what happened to Gokhan Saki, also at UFC 226. So you know,
Yeah, that's
it,
true. I mean, I forgot I forgot what I wanted to say about that. He lost to Roundtree, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and then there's I think there is something to be said though about somebody coming in with a prominent, like if you look at Aaron Pico's debut at Bellator, you were there for that here in New York. Like everybody was like all about his wrestling, and he's still a really great wrestler. I saw his last wrestling match. I mean, and he lost it, but it was kind of a fluke that in my opinion, that he lost when he was trying to get in the do the Olympic the trials. But anyway, um, knowing that, I think when a fighter comes in with a very well known game as far as like where their initial discipline is, it can make them overconfident and they actually will wind up losing. That happened to him, and it looks like, I mean, Saki almost got knocked out in this fight against that what's the dude that looks like a big ass Bruno Mars? I forgot his name, that he lost,
Oh,
that he
did you fight Okami?
no, it was the hell's that? They just released him not that long ago. It's like it's because that was his first fight, and this was, I think, was his second fight with the UFC, Saki. So
Yeah, I can't remember. He fought a night. I was at a Bellator event actually that night, so
yeah, so
I missed some of that card that evening. But yeah, Saki will come back. He's a striker, but it's
yeah,
MMA, smaller gloves, and Roundtree's no joke.
yeah. But the point I'm making is like when they come in, I think there's an overconfidence in their own ability. Like they're bringing, I'm the top guy in this, and no one here can really match me there. So I'm always going to win that way, and I think that's what happens. So it helps when they change. So like if you look at again with Aaron Pico, he lost that first fight trying to impose his wrestling and everyone's expecting it. So there's holes in that. If you know what to expect, you can find a hole. And I think the same thing happened with Saki because now Pico obviously uses boxing because nobody really knew about his boxing. Now everybody knows, and now he's freaking putting dudes' guts in their backs. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
he fought Henrique da Silva.
that's it. Yeah, he looks like a mutated Bruno Mars.
So yeah, so that you got then as we look up to the 227 card, I think Thiago Santos is a pretty clear favorite over Kevin Holland.
Yeah.
And then that brings us to the co-main event of Demetrius Johnson and Henry Cejudo.
Yeah, so like a lot of people are like, and I'm one of them. I mean, I'm obviously still picking DJ Mighty Mouse in this one, and but like I'm not completely counting out Cejudo either, just because of the where he comes from with his. We just talked about where strong wrestlers, the competitive background that he has. I think that he most likely trained harder and is prepared harder for this fight against DJ. Hopefully, we don't lose any more fights between now and then, but you know what I mean? Like, I honestly think I don't think it's going to be as quick a finish. I think it might be a little tougher, but I still think Mighty Mouse will come out with the win on this one.
Yeah, I mean at this point you can't really pick against Mighty Mouse. He seems like he's just on such a higher level than everybody in the 125-pound weight class. But I'd love to see Cejudo win. I'm going to the event and I tell people, especially when the fight card's not something that I'm necessarily losing sleep over. That I'd like to see history. So for me, history would be him losing. It was the same way when I watched Anderson Silva lose to Chris Weidman. You know, Bisbing. I mean, I'm not a Bisbing fan, but I was rooting for him
Yeah.
this night. When it's a fight that I'm not completely invested in, I usually like to root for the history of chance to see something that's never really happened before. And
Yeah, and that's one thing. Like when we were talking about with Daniel Cormier and Stipe, like like I know they said that the numbers weren't good for that pay per view, and that was probably one of the most awesome things to happen in at a UFC pay per view, and at least in the recent pay per views, So
that was the event overall was great. I mean, if that would have had the Max Ortega match, that would have just been off the chain as far as UFC event. So I mean that was a great from start to finish. There really wasn't take away the Nagano Lewis fight, which nobody saw that coming. You know, Arguably the worst fight in UFC history, or maybe you know,
an
but
abomination. Like
yeah,
Dana White called it an abomination at the press conference.
yeah. So, but yeah, exactly. But seeing Cormier make history, that I mean that was just that's wild. I was there when he won that, and I was when McGregor beat Alvarez. So to be a part of both of those twice in a lifetime event so far, I guess you'd say, is it's been pretty freaking cool. So that's where I go with Cejudo. Plus he's an Olympic gold medalist. It'd be cool to have an Olympic gold medalist win a UFC championship. It'd be another thing that's never happened. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
man. I mean, like I said, it's. I think he's gonna do better. But you know what? The other thing too, like before we get to the main event, the other thing about like everyone's talking about how this card is underwhelming and it's not going. But those are always the ones that amazing stuff happens at. You know, like usually the ones that people are kind of brushing off, and then the next week you're talking about like I think that happened with his last fight, like the last time when he did the suplex armbar move. The what do they call that? The mousetrap now.
yeah.
um it turned into one of the things that people were like, damn, I wish I saw that, and they caught the highlight like after the fact. So I have a feeling that like this card is going to be one of those cards. I think it's going to be one of those ones that people are going to watch, like, the replays, and maybe watch it after the fact, maybe not get all the pay-per-view numbers that they want to get for the buys, but I think it's gonna be one of those cards.
I hope so. My fear when you have smaller guys is you could have potentially a lot of decisions.
Yeah.
Sitting there for 12 decisions, it could be a long night. But
Tell me about it. I've
you know,
I've, I've been there. That's UFC 208 right there.
there you go. So it can happen. Hopefully, it doesn't. So that's up to the co-main, and then for me, the main event. I'm TJ Dillashaw. Is one of my probably favorite current. Well, he is one of my favorite current fighters. So I'm definitely a big fan of his. And he's fighting Cody Garbrandt in a rematch from their fight last November,
Hmm.
where TJ knocked him out in a back and forth kind of rock'em sock'em
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah. The thing about that fight, what I think what makes this fight so hard to call. I mean, I'm with you. I'm also picking TJ Dillashaw to win. But the thing about, like, okay, when you look at their history and of where they train and the whole alpha male thing, the thing that makes both these guys unique, obviously, Dillashaw is away from Team Alpha Male and all that, and he's over with Ludwig and everything. But the thing that makes them unique is that they're not cut from the same Team Alpha Male cloth. You know what I mean? Like all most of them are wrestlers base or have a wrestling base. So they do the takedown, mount to guillotine. Like that's usually their finishing combo. Most of those guys, you look at all those guys, they're like copies of Uriah Faber. But the thing that makes both Dillashaw and Garbrandt unique to me, anyway, obviously Dillashaw left his mind an open book and takes instruction well, and he was able to adapt and evolve under the training of Dwayne Ludwig. And Cody Garbrandt, even though he's a great wrestler, he didn't come in just with that like a lot of those guys did. He came in with he's got a really strong boxing background. I think I wrote down his record. He's 32-0 as an amateur boxer.
Really?
Yeah, so that's why, like, if you watch his fight with Dominic Cruz, that's why he was able to uh, find answers to hit those odd angles Cruz tries to come at guys with, because he's used to them already. So that's what makes Garbrandt a unique fighter, and he's not really another alpha male team member clone. He's unique. He's unique in his own way, without leaving the team and leaving the squad or whatever happened with that beef. So that's what makes the fight so hard to call, and I think that's why the last time they fought, like you said, they both had the back and forth. They damn near dropped each other, and T.J. Dillashaw just got the final, harder blow that finished the fight. So it's gonna be. I think that's gonna be another exciting, just as exciting as the first one. I'm pretty sure a finish is gonna come, but I wouldn't completely write off Garbrandt. You know what I mean? Like he is a younger man, but I think T.J. Dillashaw is just as far as in the cage, he's just a smarter guy to adapt to an opponent as the fight goes on.
Yeah, I think he's just the better overall fighter. I think he's a little more technical, and I think that'll probably be the difference. I don't know. Since they both hit each other so hard in the first fight and dropped each other. The only thing that concerns me is a possible little bit of hesitation on each other when they in the fight. So I don't know if I see it. I think a decision happens probably in this fight. I think TJ probably takes him about 4 rounds to 1 or so. Um, I think Cody will come out early. If anything, he might show some aggression early, but I think TJ will probably weather the storm again, and I think his movement and But then I say that, and then you forget how Cody looked against Cruz.
Hmm.
In that fight, he used great movement, and if he comes out fighting like that, then I could be a great technical battle. Really, it could go from
Yeah,
a brawl to a technical battle.
and so that's pretty much what happened the first time because I mean, if you look at with the way Dillashaw comes from with the instruction he gets from Ludwig, who's a striker in his own right, that's passing on that knowledge to somebody that wants to learn it like Dillashaw, and then you have somebody that already kind of had the high level striking knowledge in Garbrandt that's able to add counter those angles the way he did with Dominic Cruz. It's definitely going to be like a high output, whoever can land the most, and most powerful and drop a guy. So I mean that right there, that's going to be the fight that's going to have you on the edge of your seat when you're there on Saturday. I'm definitely going to be able to catch the main card. I'm going to miss the prelims for sure. I really want to watch. There's one on the Fight Pass prelims. Jose Torres is going to have the second fight against Alex Perez, and I know he's saying that's going to be his real UFC debut because the other one was kind of like a fluke with the slam and the guy knocking himself out. So I'm looking forward to that one too. I'll catch that like Sunday morning or whatever. But the main card, man, this is I'm glad you're going to be there. This is definitely one that I feel like, especially the main event. I feel like that's going to be a hot topic all next week.
Yeah, I mean, it's a UFC event. I love it. It's in LA, so it's only about an hour and a half for me. So it's nice to change from having to get on a plane or drive out to Vegas. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I might head out to the press conference tomorrow. I managed to scoop up a couple tickets before they sold out.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah, I actually got some pretty decent ones. So I'm gonna see how work goes in the morning. If I can free up, I'm gonna try to shoot down there. It's about a 5 hour round trip for what you know for a weigh-in and a press conference. But I think it's gonna be cool. I think there's some heavy fights to get announced tomorrow. At least I hope there is.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I heard a couple things I'm not allowed to talk about, but I have an idea of what's going to be announced tomorrow.
yeah,
So
well, I mean, I think we're gonna get Connor and Khabib. Um, I'm assuming that that'll be in Vegas for 229. And I don't know if we'll get a main event for 2:30 in New York. Um, I'm all booked up for that one. It falls on my 40th birthday, so I'm pretty psyched for that event, especially with all the middleweight bouts that have been.
I'm psyched because you're coming here. That's what I'm psyched for.
Well, right now I'll tell you what they've announced. Well, they haven't. Nothing's really official, but Weidman, Rockholt, uh, Adesanya, and Brunson, Romero and Costa, and
Hmm.
Jacare and Branch. That's basically four of the top or eight of the top 10 middleweights in the world, all on the same card. So if that holds as a main card, that would be great. And in my perfect world, honestly, tomorrow Mighty Mouse and TJ both win, and Mighty Mouse goes into the cage and calls him out for the New York main event. Um,
That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, it looks like the two division thing or whatever is the UFC's new you know that's their new gimmick to try to get people to buy pay-per-views. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the next one.
Well, I've always I love when fighters jump out of weight classes. I don't mind. I don't want to hold the division up with too much, but in this case, that I think it would be a fine scenario to have Mighty Mouse leave the 125. Well, whether he stays at 125 and Dillashaw goes down, personally, I think he should go up to 135, try to get a second belt if he manages to win this weekend and really build his resume. Um, he talks about money. He talks about kind of promotion and eyes on his fights. Um, if he were to, at a pay per view, go into the fight, call out the main event winner, and go headline an event at Madison Square Garden, there's not really much else he could do on his end at that point. Especially with the rumored card, like I was mentioning, you put together that kind of middleweight card with a TJ versus Mighty Mouse main event, and I gotta believe you're looking in the over 500,000 pay per view buys at that point.
Yeah.
And if the sport is unless the sport's just dying. But that would be a huge event. With names like Rockhold and Weidman and Romero and all the other ones I mentioned. So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens tomorrow at the press conference.
Yeah, I'm
And
excited to watch it. I mean, I'm probably gonna catch it later. So if hopefully you make it there, and you can tweet some stuff about it, so I can catch it from where I'm at. But you know, I'm gonna watch it later. I do have the weigh-ins, the ceremonial weigh-ins scheduled on the blog board Jungle to
have
air.
have you seen what time those are supposed to start? Do you
Uh,
recall?
I have it scheduled. If you look, I think so for you, I think it's gonna be 3 o'clock.
3. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes it a
Yeah.
lot better. I was worried it was before because at the press conference, imagine it'll last an hour max.
Yeah.
I didn't want to end up with 2 hours of dead time if I end up down
Well,
there.
you know, nothing in MMA starts on time anyway when it comes to
No,
press conference weigh-ins. They're
yeah, I
always
don't.
at least 15, 20 minutes late.
Yeah, that's true. I don't mind it as long as it flows once it starts. I
Yeah.
hate having an hour and a half wait. So we'll see what happens there. In other news for another promotion, one thing that broke since we've been on last was that Bellator announced their welterweight Grand Prix. Um, and they also came out with the DAZN network streaming service announced that their price point is going to be $9.99.
Yeah, I wrote about that on Front Proof Media. The stream of the press conferences on that article too.
So I know we'd previously talked about, what would it be if that was $20 or $5 or whatever. I think $10 is fine. I think fans of Bellator will be able to swallow that as long as
Yeah.
they put, but if it has events like they got coming up. I mean, if you want to watch Fedor fight, you might have to come up with $10. If you want to watch Musashi fight, you're gonna have to come up with $10.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
there's no commitment. It's cancel anytime. And the other thing about it too is the only thing might so I mean, and they're obviously if you're into boxing too, they have all the matchroom boxing fighters signed with them to perform or fight exclusively on the zone. I keep wanting to say DAZN because it's hard for me to say the zone, but
because it doesn't make any sense.
yeah, yeah, but I don't know if anybody saw the interviews on the Blogboard Jungle YouTube channel. I spoke with James Rushton. He's when they first announced this whole thing about what their plans are. So it has a good chance to be the Fight Pass for Bellator because they if you think about how Fight Pass started, it only had like WEC, UFC, Strikeforce, Pride events, and then they added all this stuff. That's actually what made me sign up for a Fight Pass was when they finally added Pancrase. I was like, I just got to do it.
Yeah.
And now it's one of the things I need to have. But just I mean, to be devil's advocate, like you said, $9.99 is affordable and we can do it. But the thing is, so now you have we have I mean, you pay a year in advance obviously for Fight Pass or whatever if you do the whole year. But now it's another $10 a month for DAZN if I want to get everything, which I do. And then it's plus my goddamn Netflix. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, no, I mean I hear you. Believe me, I've got every BS streaming service going right now, and you just got to pick and choose, and I'm a supporter of Bellator from day one, so it's one of those things where I'll keep supporting them, and they have a bunch of fighters that I'm heavily invested in, so it's not that's not a killer for me. $20 a month would have been a different story. At that point, I would have pick and choose which events I might you know want to watch or be willing to pay that for. But for $10, it's like you said. Hopefully they use some. They're not common sense, but hopefully they're able to get some other organizations. I know K1 in Japan with the lighter weights has been
yeah,
really fighting the last couple years, and it's hard for us in the United States to watch. Um, I know they have a deal with Shamrock FC, and I know they're on Flow Combat right now, but I don't know how that
yeah,
contract works. But perhaps having their kind of farm system on the network wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either.
yeah.
Um, and there's a bunch of organizations, Ring of Fire, Ring of Combat out by
Ring of Combat, yeah.
Hey, there was an event called Ring of Fire too.
No, there is. I think it's a pro wrestling thing. That's why I laughed. That's why I started laughing. But or Ring of Honor is the wrestling thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, the which I kind of wish that was an MMA name for some reason. But anyway,
there was one. I think Pete Spratt headlined an event. I think I have a DVD hidden somewhere. But
but you know what? Just to go back to like what you just talked about with the regional things. That's one of the things. If anybody hasn't watched it, go. It's on this YouTube channel from about a month ago when they first announced the zone deal. I was at the press conference. It was at Viacom headquarters, so I got a nice interview with James Rush, and he's the CEO of the zone. And one of the things I asked him was, "Are you planning on expanding what you're offering as far as regional MMA submission only grappling? Are you looking to get into that?" And his answer was, because they do a lot of. If you look, they launch when they announced that price point, the Zone US social media outlets all launched too. So it's like the Zone underscore US on Twitter. So he said they do a lot of social listening, which means if they see enough interest, they'll start looking. I mean, I'm sure they'll send somebody out to buy to do contracts with the regionals, because there's not every regionals with Flow Combat. Some of them are there's a good number of them with the UFC, but a lot of them are overseas too. And the Zone is big in Europe. So I mean, they could, if they see there's an interest, if we show them as fight fans, if we show them an interest, they would likely pursue it, and our $9.99 a month will buy us more. You know what I mean? And I kind of see that happening, because that's exactly what happened with Fight Pass. I didn't want to sign up for it because I'm actually looking at the box full of my Pride DVDs sitting right over there. I have every event except the one that I loaned out to this judo guy that never gave it back to me, because it's the Yoshida Hoist Gracie match fight. I lent it to him to watch, and I haven't seen it ever since. So, but anyway, yeah. So I don't know. I think over time, if you don't jump into Zone now, I think you'll be jumping in it like a year from now.
yeah, no, exactly. And anything that keeps Bellator going, um, for me at this point is a positive. So if financially it's working out for them, even if the amount of viewers is not the exact number that they're getting on the Paramount Network, um, then good for them. It's always nice to have more eyes, but at this point, it's all about money and being able to keep fighters there and pay them. And I the cards they got coming up. We finally got dates for the heavyweight Grand Prix. I know we've brought that up several times. October 12th, we got Mitrione and Bader, and then the following night, October 13th, we get Fedor and Sonnen. So that coming
Yeah,
off the heels of the September 29th McDonald Musashi and start of the welterweight Grand Prix.
closing
That
out
could,
the year strong. Yeah.
that's going to be a big 2 week period for Bellator right there, and DAZN streaming. So, you know, obviously fans they're offering the stream. The DAZN is offering the first month or 30 days free. So common sense would say order on right before the event on September 29th, and that'll carry you through, and you'll get that event, and you'll get the next two Bellator events, whether they're on Paramount or on the streaming service.
There you go.
Two
That's
weeks
a
later.
fight hack. Fight hack from Matt Hawkins.
Yeah, we can talk about getting other credit cards and email addresses too,
Yeah.
but we won't go there right now. Ed, it was good talking to you. It's been a few weeks. Um, Hopefully next week we're back onto our normal schedule. Um,
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I just so folks know, I mean, there's stuff going on. I mean, not to get too into detail, but some stuff going on messing with the schedule. But we'll try to keep up the weekly. Coming at you a little late, but we'll keep up weekly, whether it be predictions. We'll try to get back to our regular interview schedule soon. But in the meantime, make sure you subscribe. We're on it. We're on everything now: Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play Podcasts, Breaker, Radio Public, Overcast, all of them.
and that's Coast to Coast Combat Hour, at Combat Hour on Twitter. Myself, MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram, and you can follow Ed at Carbazal on Twitter. Well, Ed, hopefully we'll talk next week. Definitely talk to you over this weekend about the fights, and see if we got some new champions next week when we talk.
Yeah, man, and you have a good time while you're out there too. Make sure you take some good pictures.
I'll definitely do that if I make it out there. I'll
All right,
definitely have good fight photos.
all right, man.
All right, take it easy, man.